My name is Alice Farrell Massert. I was born in Brackenridge, Pennsylvania. School life. Well, let me see. I didn't like school very well. And when I was a senior, someone called they wanted somebody to go to work, and as a senior, I went to work, and I went to work for a doctor, okay? And he was the doctor who examined did all the school children's exams, and then if you could remember the civilian pilots that we had, and then we did the physicals for the civilian pilots, okay? And we traveled to many different colleges. Pearl Harbor. All I can remember is I think I was ironing, okay, and it came over the radio that Pearl Harbor had been attacked. Okay, and that there was a lot of damage, and that's all I really remember. Well, I was in the Navy for 2 years, okay, and I copied Japanese code. And when I was 62, I got a real estate license, and I said, the funny part is, the first person I had in my card to sell a house to was a man from Japan. And I can remember saying to him, isn't it ironic how things have changed?
I was sworn in at the old post office in Pittsburgh on December the 18th, 1941. Well, most pilots always want to be fighter pilots. You know, you want to be an ace. You shoot down 5 planes, you're an ace. You know, you'll be a hot shot.
I jumped. Plane's going this way, I jumped that way, the plane, and I missed. I was still at 30,000 feet when I got hit that day. I went out. I woke up. I must have been at 18,000. Still had my parachute on. Landed, and I got picked up by some Romanian people. They picked me up and took me to their farm. Pretty soon, I could hear these damn boots coming in. I could see their crouch. Found everybody that lived in that village came out.
They were going to shoot you.
Huh?
They were going to shoot you. You told
Oh yeah,
me.
they were going to march me right out of there. And that was going to be the end of me.
And with our Hellcats, we could carry 2,500-pound loads on those and fly farther and faster than our bombers. First raid we made in Japan on the homeland. Buddy of mine got shot down. I saw him get down. I saw him land on the beach. I saw him jump out of his plane and run for cover. Being shot down. We had 2 fellows in our squadron that through the skipper's request had taken up photography. Their planes were stripped down, and they would go out and take pictures of intended targets. I was supposed to take out a gun that was pinpointed on that map. I get there, go around about, I get to my position where I want to go. I make my dive in this area where this cannon's supposed to be. It ain't there, they'd moved it. The guy took a shot at me, hit me dead center in the prop. So I made a recovery. Flew back towards the carrier as far as I could get. They got a Mariner seaplane, had a rescue unit, they flew out. And after 3 hours of swimming, they picked me up.
I was very proud to serve my country, and in spite of everything, it was just the greatest experience you could have. We had to report down at the train station there in Pittsburgh at 9 o'clock at night, and I asked the sergeant where we were going. He says, well, you'll find out when you get there. It was a troop train, and I don't know exactly where it was going, but we were left off at in Chattanooga, Tennessee, because Fort Oglethorpe was outside of Chattanooga, and that's where I had my basic training. Anyway, I entered the service then in January, and in September, well, that year, August 1945, the war was over. And so, of course, we were all very, very delighted, and we celebrated as best we could, danced, I think, all night long. And the day before I got discharged, there was a wire that was forwarded to me from my office in Orlando. It was the commanding officer forwarded it to me, but the wire was from the Polish embassy in Washington, D.C., and they were requesting an interview. Well, you can imagine my surprise and thrill of pieces, because here I am in Washington. Had I gone back to camp, I never would have been able to get another furlough. I didn't have the money for another train ride. And so I said it was just the Lord looking after me.
I volunteered to go to flight school. So I was coming out of OCS and volunteering to go to flight school. It was really, really a strange and harrowing experience. The first time I soloed, flew by myself, I almost crashed. You couldn't have got a snake underneath the skids of my OH-23. And then, after I got my flight school done, I already had a background in working in maintenance. So then they sent me to aircraft maintenance school. So I got another school because I'd had that one in there. That's where I served with the 155th Assault Helicopter Company. I went in exactly October the 13th, 1967. I was with the 595th Signal Unit, and we were in support of the Big Red One.
And your father was in World War II.
Yes, he was. My father was in the transportation unit, and he was with an all-black unit, and he couldn't ride in the front of the train. He couldn't ride in the front of the train, but the white prisoners of war could ride in the front of the train. But the black people, even though they were United States Army, they had to ride in the back of the train.
You're a World War II veteran.
Yes.
From New Kensington. Were you drafted or did you enlist?
I was drafted.
What were you doing the day before you were drafted?
I was working at the American Window Glass Company.
And then you got your draft notice, and what was next?
Got on a train in Springdale, went to the old post office building in downtown Pittsburgh. That's where I was drafted into the service. We left Pittsburgh the same night on a train to New Cumberland, Pennsylvania. From there, we spent a day there, then got on a train and went to Camp Landing, Florida.
What year would this have been?
1944.
Do you recall Pearl Harbor Day?
Yes.
What do you recall of Pearl Harbor Day?
I was working for Jim Calarigas, Shining Shoes on 10th Street in New Kensington. That's when the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor.
You went in 1944. What did you do?
I was a replacement for the guys that were lost during the Battle of the Bulge at St. Vith.
Mr. Penchek, thank you very much for sharing what you have. We appreciate it.
Okay, you're quite welcome.
Thank you.
I'm glad I could help you out a little bit.
Me too.
The Buffalo Soldiers, the story has not ever been told properly. By that I mean there is so much to tell, you would need an entire history book. You're talking about men who fought during the Civil War. And after the Civil War, said, what are we going to do with them? What should you do? Give them a job, give them furloughs, whatever, give them a pension. No, we can't do that. And let's get rid of them. Or where are we going to get rid of them at? We're going to send them out west. And they're going to be, United States has something called manifest destiny. They believe, the country believed, that we should be sea to sea, from Atlantic to the Pacific. And the Native Americans were a problem. They should have been, but that's, again, they wanted to move them. So they decided to use the African American soldiers who were in the Civil War. And the name Buffalo Soldiers is a name of respect. It's a name that shows you what you are. The Native Americans felt so inspired, no, that's the wrong word. They felt so impressed by the fighting ability of these African American soldiers. They call them Buffalo Soldiers.
If somebody came from another planet and they had never heard about the Vietnam War, how would you describe it?
I'd have to say that we went there initially as a good people trying to stop supposedly the communism. They were bragging about the domino effect back then, and that's what they were trying to do. Whenever the North Vietnamese would infiltrate, they would use South Vietnamese scouts. And even when we captured them, they'd even tell us that the North Vietnamese even talked down and thought that the South Vietnamese were lesser. I mean, we killed a lot of their people. I mean, I know for a fact that our kill ratio was 10-1, and the South Koreans were 20-1.
My name is Howard Trinkner, and I was born in Natrona, Pennsylvania in 1920. My main job was in 1940. I got a job at Alcoa as apprentice machinist, and the apprentice machinist term was 4 years, and that's why I didn't go in the Navy sooner. While we were on our trade, they kept deferring us. So I was deferred until 1944, and I was drafted in, and I left for the Navy from the Historical Society place in Trenton. We left by train and went up to Sampson, New York, and that's where I started my boot training for the Navy. Well, on the way over to the Pacific, the war in Europe, the Germans surrendered, and we were in the middle of the Pacific when that happened. Then we went to an island by the name of Ulithi. Before we went to Okinawa, Truman dropped the bomb, so we didn't have to go. They weren't going to invade Japan, but they had enough equipment there and supplies to invade Japan. The thing that got my attention more than anything was when we come into San Francisco. I'm in the Golden Gate Bridge. Pardon me. Right now, under the Golden Gate Bridge, all these people on the bridge. It was very impressive. Well, then we left there and went on down through the Panama Canal over to Le Havre, France, and delivered a load of oil. And after that, we started to come back, and well, then they started to release us.
Oh, I don't know. I was inducted into the U.S. Army, drafted about 7 months before Pearl Harbor. They put us on a boat, took us real early. We were the only ones on the boat. So somebody comes and says, well, you're here all by yourself. Let's go over to the brewery and get a beer. And I spied a telephone booth over there in a corner. So I run over into this booth and I called my parents up. And I said, I am on this here ship. Greta Garbo had a stateroom on it, and we're going to leave. I don't know where we're going. Now, the name of the ship is the Kungsholm. That ain't exactly what the crew calls it, though. We go over to the invasion, actually, of Africa at Casablanca. And on the way over, we're zigzagging back and forth. They kept in evasive action. The Germans reported on the radio, the Kungsholm has been torpedoed and sunk. So naturally my parents assumed that I was dead. The boat was sunk. And we arrived in Casablanca. I gave a letter to one of the soldiers. I said, take this letter back home and mail it to my parents so they know I'm all right. Of course, I didn't even know the boat had been sunk. And so back home, the letter came about a month later, and Mom come home, said, here's a letter from Louis. And Dad says, forget about Louis, you know the boy's dead. Well, anyway, they were happy to learn that I had landed in Casablanca.